radio station, and now you can find 15 total teams when it comes to robotics competitions here in Mississippi. 4 new robotics teams have been added for the 2024 season. Joining us to tell us a little bit more about the whole sport is Miss Carolyn Arthur. She is the regional director for First Robotics Competition. Hey, Carolyn.
Hey, how's it going today?
It's going well, and I'm so excited to hear we have expanded to 15 total teams here in the state, and for that's going to be like high school teams, correct, Carolyn?
Yes, and we actually have 6 rookies this year in 2024. Pretty amazing growth.
Oh, that is amazing. Okay, so when we hear robotics competition, I know some are familiar with it. Others are thinking it's the coolest thing ever like me and maybe aren't really into it. How do you sort of describe First Robotics Competition?
First of all, it stands for inspiration and recognition of science and technology. And what we try to do with First is use a robotics platform to develop the person, the entire person. So yes, they're learning about STEM, they're learning about automation, they're learning about manufacturing, machine learning, but at the same time, they're also learning how to work as a team, how to be a leader, how to manage their time, how to do project management, all of these transferable skills that they can then use whether they're going into the workforce or they're going directly into a career or even in military enlistment. So it's really an all-around, well-rounded program for these high school students.
Is it through the school, Carolyn, or these independent teams that can sort of sprout up? You know, obviously they have to be school-aged, but within the community.
We actually have both. And in Mississippi, one of the models that I've been using as I'm recruiting teams is what we call a community model, a community-based team. So let's say out of those rookies that we have that are starting in 2024, we have Laurel High School who's starting, and that is going to be attached to Laurel High School so that only Laurel students in that high school can participate on that team. But on the other side, we also have Forest County, Scott County, and Jasper County. They're all starting teams as well. And those are more community-based teams. So if you're in that county, you can participate on those teams, whether you're at one of the schools, you're at the CTE center, or if you're in a homeschool situation. So it's really great with the access and inclusion element. We can really pinpoint more students when we're talking about that community model.
Okay, so I understand that they build a robot that obviously has to do tricks and do all the things, and they bring it to a competition, and then it's kind of like, you know, I'm thinking of like a turtle race. You release them all and see what they can do, but probably a little more complicated than that. So how do they know, like in terms, is there like themes each year, Carolyn, or are there specific tasks that have to be completed? Because when you take a bunch of parts and say just build a robot, you really, you know, you could get 1,000 different things from just the same 100 parts.
That's so true. Yes, that is so true. So yeah, each year we do change the theme. So this year the theme is First in Show. So we're bringing in an art element, and so we actually have K through 12 or pre-K through 12 programming, and each level of programming has a different theme that relates to that main theme. So with the high school competition this year, our theme is Crescendo, and we actually won't know what that really means until January 6th. So it's coming up really close here. January 6th, the first Saturday of every year, so the first Saturday in January, is when we do our global kickoff. And it's simulcast through Twitch and NASA. And the Mississippi teams are going to go down to NASA, Stennis Space Center, Infinity Center, and they're going to watch it. Hopefully most of them will be able to make it down there and watch it all at once. We are going to have our rookies, all but I think one of them is able to get down and be there for that event. They're going to watch together. They're going to learn exactly what they have to do with their robots this year, and they're going to do that right next to veteran teams. So it's a really good opportunity for the rookies and the veterans to be able to work together. So they'll find out what tasks the robot physically has to do. So maybe it has to pick something up and put it in another location. Maybe it has to bring something across the field. Maybe it has to do a pull-up. Maybe it has to stack something. Maybe it has to stack on top of each other. We never know. So one of the things that they'll be watching for is all of the different ways that the mechanics and the programming of these robots how many ways can they make these different tasks happen? And what's really kind of interesting about this competition, you're saying, like, let loose the hounds. That, we have a little bit more, more organization than that, but it is kind of a crazy atmosphere and a very exciting atmosphere. What we do is we give the teams, on the morning that they arrive for competition, we give them a list, and it's randomly generated, and they get into teams of 3. So it's alliances of 3 teams, and one match they might be working with one team, and then the next match they might actually be competing against that same team. So within that scope of 48, 42, whatever we end up with in the final count of the Magnolia Regional, they have to know all of their own strengths as well as their own weaknesses, so that when they get paired up with these other alliance partners, they can recognize what that partner's strength is, and they come together as a team and they say, okay, this round, we're going to do this part, you're going to do this part, and then we're going to work together to make sure that we can attain the goal. And then the next time, they know they might be against that person, and so they can use that to that advantage, or that team, rather, so they can use that to their advantage. It's a really, really interesting model, and much related to sports. So it's a familiar model when you watch it.
Well, I love, too, we've had the Brandon team here on Good Things before one of their competitions. You had kids who may be in other extracurriculars that would have never crossing paths from football to show choir to band to all the things, but then they come together for their first competition and sort of showing that, you may be good at this skill or that skill, but then you can also be good at STEM or sort of technology. There's a place for everybody on it in that way. It doesn't have to be necessarily athletic abilities only, or just nerdy abilities only. You can be nerdy and athletic, or all the things to make this sort of happen.
Absolutely.
So, Carolyn, though, what's one of the biggest roadblocks for people listening that may think, gosh, I'd want one of those in my community or at my school? What is one of the biggest roadblocks to folks taking that step and getting that done?
Yeah, I think the biggest roadblock that we have, every state's a little bit different. I think that one of the biggest roadblocks that we have for Mississippi is actually mentors. You would think off the top that it might be money, but we have some amazing sponsors in Mississippi. We have some companies that have really stepped up. Every single team that's being started in Mississippi for the first 2 years is sponsored by NASA, for example. I mean, can you imagine these kids are going to be able to communicate and be able to work with NASA as high schoolers? I mean, that's amazing. And then when we talk about the other areas where Mississippi Power is the service area of Mississippi Power, they're actually sponsoring teams not just for the first 2 years, but for as long as they're a team. So those 2 sponsors are really key. In one of our areas, we have Holmac as one of our sponsors. They've stepped up to provide some mentors. But going back to the mentor idea, the skill sets that are required to be able to have these kids really have success, there's a broad range. It can be a technical mentor, but it could also be a non-technical mentor. We need people like machinists. We need programmers in Java and Python and other types of code. But then we also need people that are really good at project management, really good at just being organized, acting of a team member, and be able to just keep them wrangled and keep them fed and keep the team logistics in order, because they do have to travel sometimes for these events. So I would say that the number one obstacle or challenge, let's just call it a challenge, not an obstacle. I don't want to be negative. The number one would be mentorship. And then probably the number 2 would be the sustainability of funding.
So, Carolyn, if you got folks interested in it, where can they go to learn more or see if there's a team in their area and what's coming up?
I think the best way to do it, especially for Mississippi, is to go to our local website, which is www.frc, that's as in First Robotics Competition, FRCLA-MS, so it's FRC Louisiana, Mississippi, FRCLA-MS.org. And you'll find my contact information plastered all over that website. And you can always email me and tell me what you're interested in, whether it's starting a team, becoming a mentor. You could be a part-time mentor or a full-time mentor, or even volunteering at our event. Our event is going to be March 14th through 16th. The public days are the 15th and the 16th, and we welcome everyone to come. It is a free event. It's family-friendly. Just don't wear open-toed shoes, and we'll give you some safety goggles to make sure everyone stays safe.
Carolyn, I feel like we'll be talking a little bit more in 2024. I'm all over this. I think it's super cool and a great opportunity for our students. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. We've got some great support in your area. I'd love to bring some teams on in the future. Thanks so much.
All righty. You guys stick with us. We got more good for you coming up next.